The Grove is a shared digital garden that an entire subreddit grows together within a single persistent post. Standard retention games rely on manufactured cooldowns. You tap an object, a number goes up, and a timer explicitly locks you out until the next day to force a habit. That model traps every user in their own isolated progression loop, where their actions only affect a personal, private save file. The Grove abandons that isolation. It lives on a public community front page, accessible through a direct entry point on the subreddit. Clicking this doesn't spin up a local instance, but connects the user to a singular, persistent game constrained within a standard Reddit post. Because every member of the community interacts with the exact same object, checking back shifts from a personal chore to collective curiosity. You log in to see what the rest of the community did while you were away. Typical mobile architecture connects one player's device directly to one isolated database node, generating thousands of parallel, separate data tracks. To make a globally shared object function, the system uses an end-to-one shared state architecture. Instead of parallel lines, all user inputs are funneled directly into a single, centralized data hub that represents the active instance for everyone. This hub runs on Reddit's Devit platform, using a server layer that routes all community inputs into a foundational Reddit storage backend. Redis maintains the global variables, specifically the total plant growth and the daily action counts, and ensures that these totals sync for every single visitor simultaneously. The Phaser 3 engine then renders the garden scene based on that backend data. No game state is held on the user's device, which prevents client-side manipulation of the growth meter. By funneling all solitary screen taps into a shared database, the architecture turns individual interactions into measurable community-wide stakes. Examining the user interface reveals how the game manages decentralized player action without relying on artificial timers. Interactions are limited by a daily action budget, which prevents any single user from exhausting the game's content in one session. This budget resets every 24 hours, which encourages users to return frequently to use their fresh allocation, rather than dumping all their engagement into a single visit. Below the budget, the interface displays the collective choices of the day, tracking water, plant, and prune actions as separate, visible totals. Displaying these specific counters allows a visitor to read the current meta strategy of the player base and decide if the garden needs more water or more pruning at that moment. This visibility is paired with a personal habit tracker, a streak badge that recognizes individual consistency alongside the community's progress. The result is a retention loop based on contribution pacing. The daily limit and visible momentum give players a reason to return that isn't a forced lockout. A system driven purely by player inputs has a flaw. It eventually becomes predictable. Once the community optimizes their actions, the outcome is guaranteed. The solution is to introduce a systemic variable that intersects with player actions, but remains entirely beyond community control. In the Grove, this variable is a live weather modifier shown at the top of the interface. While the community knows their own input values, they cannot predict how this modifier will alter the final growth calculation during the reset cycle.
This creates an algorithmic collision. Variable A, community actions, and variable B, weather data, feed into a processor that outputs the final growth value. The Devit scheduler handles this calculation during the overnight reset cycle, determining the garden's final state while the community is away. That result is then pushed to the Phaser 3 renderer, defining the garden's visual state for the following day. This creates a functional requirement for the user to return and verify the state of the system. Because the outcome is no longer a simple derivative of their own actions, they must check the post to see the new state. This moves beyond basic random number generation by grounding the game's unpredictability in an external, real-world logic that players can observe but not influence. By intersecting decentralized actions with an uncontrollable modifier, the game creates genuine day-over-day stakes. Checking the garden becomes a necessity to see what the weather did to the community's work. There is a distinction between a game that is merely Reddit-themed and one that is structurally native to the platform. The Grove avoids superficial tropes like karma points or custom avatar items that often feel bolted onto a project. Instead, it uses the platform's most basic primitive, a single text post, as the boundary for the entire game world. It also repurposes user flair from a static label into a dynamic record of a player's in-game streak, integrating progression directly into the subreddit's social identity.
Relying on the foundational architecture of the host platform results in a frictionless experience where the game feels like a natural extension of the subreddit. To address the need for long-term scalability, the project includes a mechanical flow for adding new content via the community. This pipeline begins with the Propose Mutation button located at the bottom of the interface. Clicking this button routes a player's plant suggestion directly into the subreddit's comment section, providing a public log of community ideas. Standard upvotes then act as the filtering mechanism. The most popular suggestions are identified by the community itself through native platform interaction. Winning proposals can then be written into the Redis database as permanent assets, allowing the game's library of species to expand over time. This intake process turns the comment section into a content filter. As a result, the game's visual and mechanical variety grows based directly on the interests of the people playing it. The current prototype serves as a foundation for a broader technical roadmap focused on deeper environmental integration. The first milestone involves replacing the placeholder modifier with a live public weather API, so the garden's health reflects the actual conditions of a real-world city. The second is the automation of the streak-to-flare bridge, ensuring that a player's consistency is immediately visible in every comment they leave on the subreddit. The final milestone introduces dynamic visual feedback within the engine, rendering pixel art soil that transitions from wet mud to arid dirt. These pillars, daily action budgets, genuine shared stakes, and external variables define the project's approach to retention. The combination of these mechanics provides an alternative to the standard cooldown timer, relying on the inherent unpredictability of the environment to create a reason to return. The Grove takes a static post and transforms it into a living ecosystem, demanding the collective attention of an entire community to keep it alive.